Hello, my name's John. I'm a member of Overeaters Anonymous, and I'm very happy to share with you my story at this stage of my recovery. I joined Overeaters Anonymous about 9 months ago. My situation is not extreme. I think if you saw me walking by on the street, you would not turn to stare at me based on my body size. But the medical fact is that when I was at my ideal body weight was in high school. I don't think that's necessarily unusual, but since then, I'm at least 50 pounds plus over that weight. And it's not the result of not attempting to diet or exercise. Now, what you're seeing on the screen are some images that I use. These are the 12 promises. These are images that I use to help me recall the process that helped me gain back my serenity and my peace after having become completely powerless over my food obsession. The 12 steps were first written for the group of Alcoholics Anonymous back in right around the year 1940. And I happened to hear a set of recordings describing that early version of 12-step recovery. The recordings are called Big Book Comes Alive by Joe and Charlie. They were two very long sober alcoholics, and they tried their best to describe the original 12-step recovery process as viewed through the eyes of someone who was alive in the early 1940s. Now, there have been a lot of advances in scientific knowledge since those years. There have been a lot of advances in medical science, many advances in spiritual knowledge, advances in recovery knowledge. And the amount of information that's now available for religious knowledge is enormous. However, the principle embodied by Joe and Charlie's Big Book Comes Alive study was the folks in the 1940 era did not have our current state of knowledge, and yet they got sober. They were relieved of their obsession to drink. So like them, or inspired by them, I went back in another 12-step fellowship and was able to get sober by working the 12 steps. I've been sober for 16 years by the grace of God. But then I noticed my weight started creeping up. And just so you'll identify with my story a little bit, my doctor sent me on a weight loss series of classes. I lost weight, and when the classes were over, I gained the weight back. I asked the doctor to send me back on the same weight loss series again. He looked a little exasperated, but he did. He sent me back again. I lost weight again, and then I gained it right back. I tried the kind of things they sell in pharmacies and grocery stores that promise you'll be drinking this and it'll make your appetite go away. They did not work. I tried intermittent fasting for about a year. And whatever weight that I lost during intermittent fasting, I gained back and then some. I tried suppositories. I tried laxatives. I tried everything I could think of. Because when I stepped on the scale, I knew I wanted to see a lower number. I was unwittingly worshiping at the altar of the numbers on a scale. And the numbers on the scale were quite frankly telling me I was powerless over my weight because nothing on the scale was happening that I wanted to see, despite all my best efforts. I recognized the pattern from my other addiction that I was powerless over my food behaviors, and I went to OA, and there I met people who I just cannot express what a joy it was to meet the people in OA. Some of them had extraordinarily dramatic stories. As I said, mine is not extraordinary or dramatic, but some people did have dramatic stories. And they were very willing to share their experience, strength, and hope with me. I did work the steps. The sponsor that I got happened to be a sponsor who very much followed the 12 steps as originally worked back by those old timers back in the 1940s. So that was very fortunate. But I just want to say this about OA. Having looked at the OA 12 and 12 book, it's very clear. It's explicitly stated in that book that there is not just one single path to recovery. I know people who've had tremendous victory in OA who say they've never worked the steps, are not concerned about the steps, don't think about the steps, don't talk about the steps. And I don't think that means the steps are not important, but I do believe it is power in the world to experience recovery from an obsession through whatever means that that higher power chooses to use. So I'm very, very grateful that I was able to come into the 12-step program of OA and begin talking to someone in the same terms as I had used in my other fellowship. But I still had a problem. So I needed to define abstinence, and I needed a food plan. And it brought back some very bad memories because I had food plans so many times under these diets I had used. I had weighed myself. I had carefully measured my food. I was burned out on dieting and exercising. My sponsor understood. My sponsor basically asked me to let go of anything that was causing resentment. It turns out that's taken straight from the recovery program. As it turns out, if you recall step 4, we have to inventory resentments. Why? Because they're going to kill us. They're a luxury for normal people, but if we've got an obsessive behavior, we cannot have the luxury of resenting. So I stopped resenting, and I prayed about it a little bit. I'm not a particularly religious person at all, but I prayed about it, and immediately this thought came to mind. Don't have a complicated food plan. Don't have a complicated definition of abstinence. Just don't eat sugar or any of its cousins. Fructose, sucrose, whatever the different ways they disguise sugar in foods. Don't eat honey. Don't have, maple syrup. Just don't have sugar or its cousins. And don't have white flour. Now, I don't know where that came from because it was that distinct, but I realized later my doctor had suggested, one of many times, he suggested how to get more healthy. He said, why don't you just eat things that looked like they looked in nature? I think that's called a macrobiotic diet. Grains, potatoes, whatever. You can picture anything that you could go out and find that plant. Go ahead and consider it a safe part of your diet. Well, I cannot go out and find a sugar tree, a sugar bush. I can't get a shovel and dig down into a sugar mine and bring out buckets of sugar. And the same thing goes for flour. Even though I could say flour comes from wheat and I could go out and find a wheat field somewhere, there's no flour in that wheat field. So I would just simplify my life. Keep it simple is one of the slogans of 12 Steps, and I kept it simple. I did not eat white sugar, did not eat flour. Of course, didn't eat brown sugar, but didn't eat any sugars, didn't eat any wheat flours. It's been 9 months, and I don't have the willpower necessary to give that up because, you can name all the great foods that have sugar and or flour in them, and so can I. And my life, my rituals of life around the holidays are built around foods that have those things in it. And there's a practical part of me that would have said, good luck getting through the holidays on this eating plan. But it was not a diet plan. It was an eating plan that I sincerely believed with all my heart was given to me by my Creator. I was led to recall what my doctor said. When he first said it, I ignored it, but I think I was led back to what my doctor said by my higher power. So it's been 9 months. I have lost about half as much of the weight as I really need to lose. I've been exercising every day in the form of walking, and it's gentle walking. I'm not trying out for a sport. I just make sure that my muscles are moving 45 minutes a day. And it works for me. It works for me. But I want to say one of the miracles of this program of recovery for me, it's a food-centric program of recovery. My problem centers around food. I have enjoyed every single meal since I started working the program of OA. I don't resent what I'm eating. I don't fear what I'm eating. I don't regret what I'm eating. I adhere to that simple abstinence definition and simple food plan that I believe is given to me by a God of my understanding. And my life gets simple. Oh, it was hard to go down the entire aisle, breakfast cereal aisle of a grocery store, looking box to box to box to box to box to box, looking at every box, hoping that I could find one that did not have sugar or flour in it. I think out of probably 500 boxes, I found 2 that were some kind of keto diet, and they were safe for me to eat, and I ate them. They were pretty good. I liked them. But it was pretty heartbreaking to realize I might as well not even turn my buggy down the breakfast aisle anymore. And the same is true for, many, many processed foods. So my life has completely changed, but it's exchanged from being a life of constant frustration, irritation, disappointment, guilt, strain, battling with willpower, over to a very sweet life where I'm now living in accordance to the way I believe I was meant to live. I feel supported in the way I'm living. And I'm supported by a higher power. I'm supported by a sponsor. I'm supported by my own understanding of what it is I'm doing every day, what I need to avoid, what I need to pay attention to. These are the things that come to me on a daily basis. I'm only 9 months into this now. Some of the people I know who lost 100 pounds, these dramatic stories, which absolutely deserve attention and applause. Some of those folks were coming for a lot longer than 9 months. And I look forward to returning to a healthy body weight. I no longer fear that I'm going to yo-yo. My wife understands now, whenever she's shopping or whenever she's thinking about, what we might like to go eat, she understands no sugar, no flour. That's my response whenever she says it. Would you like to, sorry, computer problem. Would you like to, go eat fried fish? And I'll say, well, does it have sugar or flour in it? And she'll say, yes, it does. And I'll say, well, then you already know the answer. My apologies. So my life has become simpler. The promises have started to come true. You've seen me going through here. These images remind me of it. We will know a new freedom and a new happiness. There's a little housefly and all of his deceased buddies who've been trapped behind a screen that was just intended to keep flies out. But once they got inside, they were trapped. And they don't seem to have very good luck getting out. But once he finds his way out this opening, he will be free. And that's what I needed to do. This one is called We Will Not Regret the Past Nor Wish to Shut the Door on It. It shows the way things used to be. This old shadow of a clock that once hung on this wall, probably for decades. It's been replaced by a little simple electric clock. But we do not ignore the past. We accept the fact that things change, and yet we accept that some things are eternal. Whether we're using the old approach or whether we're using the new approach, we're still trying to find out what time it is, still trying to stay anchored in reality. This is called, we will comprehend the word serenity. It's a lady just stopping to appreciate a very serene scene, enjoying the shade, enjoying the still water, enjoying seeing the ducks swimming by. Comprehending the word serenity. How can you feel? How could I feel serene while feeling guilty, angry, and fearful? I couldn't. We will know peace. Peace is the end. It's a pact or agreement to end hostilities. I realized that conflicts happen. They still happen, but they end. And I didn't think I realized that before. I just thought my whole life would be endless conflict. And it's not true. I now have the tools, thanks to the steps and the fellowship of Overeaters Anonymous, to handle whatever comes today. Number 5, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experiences can benefit others. Absolutely true. I've told you where I think I land on the scale between people with a serious problem, not so serious problem, people with less of a problem than me. It doesn't matter where we are on the scale. There may be someone wanting to end their own lives who weigh only a pound or two more than or less than their ideal body weight. So if they walk into an OA meeting and they see someone who admits they too struggled with a type of food struggle that does not show up necessarily to the eye, that they will have hope, that they can be rescued, that they can find a way to back to sanity and peace. Promise 6, the feeling of selfishness and self-pity will disappear. Being selfish was my problem. And the 12 steps definitely teach everything I need to know in order to shift away from a purely selfish type of thinking over to connecting to my higher power at one end and to other people at the other end. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Absolutely. The 12 steps taught me that my success was not a success until I had shared it with someone else. Self-seeking will slip away. That utterly insane, standing and staring at the scale, judging myself, measuring myself by what the scale said. It was an absolute insanity. I no longer do that. I've just let go of that and said, God, you handle it. You take it. 9, our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. I cannot express how much my attitude on life has changed. If I had to sum it up, I would say things used to seem very random and cruel, but now I see an order to things that's very reassuring, and I see love. I see kindness, not cruelty. Promise 10, the fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. This is one of the interesting things because fear does leave me one day. You know what? It comes back the next day. If a new fear arises, I know what to do about it. And the fear will leave me again. This doesn't say I'll become incapable of fear. It just simply says that the fear of economic insecurity will leave. We will instinctively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. I don't know why, but for me, this sense of feeling baffled was a daily state of mind, and being relieved of that was such a blessing. I simply knew better how to handle situations in life, and I can't explain why other than I've surrendered it. And lastly, we will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. I don't think these are extravagant promises. They came true for me while I worked the program of OA, coming to meetings, working the steps, getting a sponsor, following my food plan, and working to maintain my abstinence one day at a time. This is John. Thanks for listening.